Hello everybody, this is Chris Michaels coming at you from the Uppermost studio here in Crow's Nest, Sydney, Australia, and welcome to part 2 of our 3-part series on our Cuban motion. We're going to do a quick recap on what we did last week and we'll get straight into part 2. Okay, so a quick recap on what we did last week. We were focusing on staccato motion, which meant that our hips went in the same time as our footwork. So for every step that we took, our hip moved once and didn't move in between it. So let's just go through that again. Find yourself a little bit of space. And we'll start again with the left foot going forward, male or female, it doesn't matter. And so what we were talking about, number 1, was taking the slow count and holding that slow count for a full 2 beats before we went directly to the side and did our side together. Backwards, held that count for a full 2 beats, and then side together. And our staccato motion was the hip at the same time as the foot. So 1, 2, my hip stays there, doesn't move in between it. 3 to the side, doesn't move in between it. 4, and I'll wait there until I'm ready to step backwards. 1, 2, and then 3, and then 4. And again, if you've been practicing that, you'll find that you should be able to get your hips and your feet moving at the same time. So we've got slow, quick, quick, slow, quick, quick. And what you can do, as we mentioned last week, is not so much focusing on the bent knee going forward, but more the straight knee stepping backwards. And this is going to focus on us extending that hip even further back or moving our hip more as opposed to there around. So we actually get more of a figure 8 motion even in our staccato. So as I step forward, rather than me just bending and then moving my hip, as I bend, I have to roll that hip because I'm pushing that knee all the way backwards. The next step that we're going to be talking about is going to be progressing that a little bit further. Now this next stage of motion is pretty advanced. So I would suggest that if you find that you lose your motion during this step, revert back to the staccato and make sure that your muscle memory is really going to be focusing on the fact that you do not want to change that hip while I transfer weight onto the foot. Now the important thing is that every time we step and we straighten that knee, our hip is going to move to the side, and that's what we've been doing with staccato. Now what's going to happen with stage 2 is that we're going to learn how to straighten our bent knee while still keeping the motion and the hip in the opposite direction. Now this is a little bit hard to get used to start with. Now we're going to start off fairly simple and we're going to take one step at a time. Now if I'm doing my staccato motion, I go slow. I hold that count for a full 2 counts. 1, 2. When I'm ready to step to the side, that knee straightens, which throws the hip straight away to the side while I take my side step. Stage 2 is learning the mechanics of straightening the knee while I'm on that 1, 2 count. And we're going to break it down so every count is fairly even at this stage, because if you try to do this too quickly, you will lose your hip motion. Now what we're going to do is on that slow, and we know that slow is 2 counts, on 1, 2, what we're going to do is we're going to step 1, but on the 2 I'm going to straighten my knee. Now what's going to happen is that you're going to be very careful, because as I straighten my knee, I don't want my hip to roll back. What this is doing is allowing me to learn how to do rhythm in my hips while my feet still aren't moving, but activating that knee to emphasize the hip movements. So here's what we're going to do. 1. On 2, I'm going to straighten my knee, and as you can see, I've still got my hip to the side. Now, very quickly, I'm going to release that right leg. Now that right leg is very important that I haven't bent it, because if I bend it, the hip moves. So as I do 1, 2, and I straighten that knee, what I'm going to do is on the next count, I'm going to bend that knee and throw it straight to the side. 3. Okay, so I've got 1, my knee straightens on 2, and then I throw my foot out on 3. So we have 1, 2, 3. Now during the quick quicks, this gets very hard because I have to do these movements very, very fast. We're still going to break this down so they're not as fast as a normal quick count. So we're going to break it down so we know from this movement, I'm going to straighten that knee. You can see I'm not throwing my hip yet. But what it's doing is exaggerating the hip even further to the left. So this is my hip, this is further to the left while I straighten that knee. Now while that knee's ready, all I need to do is bring my feet together. I'm going to do the same thing for every single step. Straighten that knee. You can see I'm not straightening the knee and doing this and releasing that knee there. I'm straightening that knee, then taking a back step. Straightening that knee, this is the tricky one. So as I step backwards, I'm straightening the knee, but I haven't bent this knee yet. So the right knee, as I step backwards, is straightening, and you can see what's happening to my hips. It's rolling around. Take a side step, straighten this, keep this leg straight. Bend that, bring it in, straighten that knee, step forward. So, let's work on that a little bit. There's not a lot that we can work on. This one is a fairly straightforward lesson. The idea is that we take our staccato to the next level. So again, if you're finding that while you're doing this, your hips are slipping and you're slipping to the side, practice this in the mirror, you'll see it very easily. Revert back to your staccato motion. So let's go through this in every single step. Bend knee forward, straight knee. Keep this knee straight. All my weight is still on the forward step, but I haven't released my hips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 steps for a box that I've got to work on. Taking the step, keeping the knee bent, straightening the knee, keeping the hip back, releasing the knee and stepping at the same time. So you can see that simple box to get this stage 2 of motion, and there's 5 steps in this motion. We're going to be covering 3 of them, but there's 5 steps to get your motion from the basic to the most advanced motion you can get. So we're going to be covering the first 2, which are working on the hips, and stage 3 is going to be working on getting some of this top line motion. Sounds weird, trust me, it happens. So, left foot forward, bent knee, straighten the knee, release the back leg, bend it, straight to the side. Straighten this knee, keep this knee straight, release this knee here, bring it in. Straighten this knee while I still keep this hip, bend this knee, move backwards, bang, straighten, side, straighten, side, straighten, side, straighten, side, straighten, side, straighten, side, straighten. This is the hardest one because you will want to do this. So as I'm straightening that hip, I'm really trying to keep my left hip moving to the left. Side, straighten, side, straighten. Okay? And do it in that format where you're not using the slows and quicks, but every count is worth 2 counts. So you know, on the first is the step, on the second is the straightening of the knee. And so you can count in those very simple, even measures to make sure that every time I'm taking a step, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that video. Practice makes perfect. It is a very hard technique to get the handle of. Remember, stage 1, staccato. Practice that until you are absolutely 100% certain that you know that during that bent knee, with all the weight on it, that your hip's not going to move. Because this will make it so much easier when you start to straighten that leg, because your hip will still stay where it's supposed to. So practice stage 1, work on stage 2, and I'll be catching you next time for our stage 3. Stay safe, look after yourselves, and we'll see you on the next video.